We are no longer the weak administration that we had for 4 years under former President Biden, who tolerated narco-terrorism. What is next for the United States and Venezuela?
Well, we're very strong, and very importantly, if you look at drugs through the oceans, through the seas, they're down 97%. That's the boats that's sort of related to this, as you know. The drugs are way down, and it's getting very, very tough. It's a whole different look. We have a whole different country. We have a country now that's respected. We have a country. I built the military in my first term, and they gave a little chunk of it away, but it was a lot. But it was a little chunk relative to what we built, but they gave it to Afghanistan.
This broadcast centers on a dramatic and highly controversial moment in U.S. foreign policy, the reported capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro by U.S. forces, an event that immediately ignited political, legal, and geopolitical debate across Washington, Latin America, and the global stage, with commentators framing the operation not as an act of war, but as the execution of long-standing federal criminal charges that date back to March 2020, when the U.S. Department of Justice formally indicted Maduro on counts including narco-terrorism, cocaine trafficking, conspiracy with a designated foreign terrorist organization, and corruption tied to the so-called Cartel of the Suns, a criminal network alleged to include senior Venezuelan military officials. And throughout the discussion, anchors emphasized that this legal distinction is central to the administration's defense of the operation, arguing that because Maduro was already under U.S. indictment in federal court, the president possessed lawful authority to order his capture without seeking prior congressional authorization, a claim reinforced by legal analysts who cite decades of precedent in which both Republican and Democratic administrations conducted cross-border capture or kill missions against indicted or designated individuals without formal declarations of war, including operations under President Barack Obama that targeted terror suspects abroad. A comparison repeatedly raised to counter immediate criticism from Democratic lawmakers who labeled the Maduro operation reckless, unconstitutional, or an act of international aggression, while supporters argue those objections ring hollow given past bipartisan acceptance of similar actions. And as the conversation unfolds, panelists draw historical parallels to the 1989 U.S. capture of Panamanian leader Manuel Noriega, noting that Noriega, like Maduro, was a sitting head of state at the time, was under U.S. indictment for drug trafficking, and was seized through a swift military operation justified legally as law enforcement rather than conquest, with commentators stressing that Noriega's arrest did not trigger global war nor collapse international norms, a comparison used to frame the Maduro operation as a rare but established tool when criminal conduct intersects with national security. Yet despite these legal arguments, the broadcast does not shy away from the profound political backlash unfolding in real time, particularly from lawmakers who accuse the administration of bypassing Congress, risking escalation in Latin America, and undermining international law. Criticisms the panel responds to by highlighting what they describe as a pattern of selective outrage, pointing out that many of the same voices remained silent or supportive during past unilateral actions carried out under previous presidents. And the discussion repeatedly returns to the issue of secrecy, with correspondents explaining that the operation was conducted with minimal advance disclosure due to fears that leaks could compromise operational security, endanger U.S. personnel, or allow Maduro to evade capture, a concern underscored by references to prior intelligence leaks from Capitol Hill that reportedly disrupted sensitive missions. And according to sources cited on the program, the plan was deliberately designed as a rapid in-and-out extraction rather than a prolonged military engagement, intended to avoid civilian casualties, regional destabilization, or open conflict with Venezuelan forces. Yet the uncertainty surrounding the immediate aftermath remains a central theme, as analysts acknowledge that removing a long-entrenched authoritarian leader creates a power vacuum fraught with risk, raising urgent questions about who governs Venezuela next, whether opposition figures such as Maria Corina Machado can unify fragmented political factions, and how deeply the military, many of whose senior leaders are themselves under U.S. sanctions or indictment, will resist or accommodate a post-Maduro transition. With correspondents reporting early signs of celebration inside Venezuela, including crowds tearing down images of Maduro, spontaneous street demonstrations, and social media videos showing apparent relief among civilians long burdened by economic collapse, shortages, and political repression, while cautioning that such scenes may not reflect the full picture, as loyalist forces, armed militias, and intelligence units could still exert control behind the scenes. And the broadcast further explores the regional ramifications of the operation, noting immediate condemnation from leaders in Mexico and Cuba, who frame the capture as a violation of sovereignty and a dangerous precedent, while commentators argue these reactions may stem less from legal principle than from fear that similar tactics could one day be applied to other leaders accused of collusion with drug cartels or transnational criminal networks, particularly as U.S. prosecutors have increasingly treated narcotics trafficking as a national security threat rather than a conventional crime. And the conversation expands to the potential impact on Colombia, where decades-long conflict with drug-linked armed groups has already blurred the line between crime and insurgency, with analysts suggesting that the Maduro operation could embolden reformist elements while alarming entrenched interests tied to illicit economies. And as the panel debates the broader strategic meaning of the capture, attention turns to the legal process awaiting Maduro in the United States, with correspondents explaining that he is expected to face prosecution in federal court in New York, where the government will attempt to prove allegations involving massive cocaine shipments, coordination with terrorist organizations, and abuse of state power to facilitate international drug trafficking. A trial that, if it proceeds, could expose sensitive intelligence, implicate foreign officials, and reshape global perceptions of accountability for authoritarian leaders. Yet panelists also acknowledge the immense challenges prosecutors will face, including questions of evidence admissibility, witness security, classified material, and diplomatic fallout. And throughout the discussion, the broadcast highlights the human dimension often overshadowed by geopolitics, reminding viewers of the millions of Venezuelans displaced by economic collapse, political repression, and violence, many of whom fled to neighboring countries or undertook dangerous journeys northward, with commentators suggesting that for these populations, the capture of Maduro represents not merely a legal milestone, but a potential turning point after years of despair, while simultaneously warning that such regime change alone does not guarantee stability, prosperity, or democratic renewal. And as the segment progresses, the debate intensifies around whether the operation signals a broader shift in U.S. policy toward authoritarian regimes linked to organized crime, with some analysts arguing that it marks a clear escalation, demonstrating that indictments are no longer symbolic but actionable, while others caution that such a precedent could provoke retaliation, strain alliances, and complicate diplomacy, especially in a region historically sensitive to U.S. intervention. And the broadcast closes by emphasizing that regardless of political spin, the capture of Nicolás Maduro represents a rare convergence of criminal law enforcement, military capability, and foreign policy, blurring boundaries that have long defined international relations, leaving unresolved questions about sovereignty, accountability, and power in a world where leaders accused of grave crimes may no longer be shielded by borders or office. And as anchors conclude, they stress that while the immediate operation may be over, its consequences are only beginning to unfold, with Venezuela's future, regional stability, and the credibility of international justice now hanging in the balance, making this moment not merely headline, but a defining test of how the global order responds when allegations of criminality reach the very top of state power.